think that the genesis of the People's Potato in practicality was in September 1999. We had a radical executive of the CSU, and they were hosting a conference called, I think, Activism in the Age of Neoliberalism, or Activism in the Age of Imperialism. And they brought in people from all over the place. It was out at Loyola, and it was a big deal. I think Tom Kiefer was instrumental in organizing that. He was a VP external, I think, or something like that. And I was in Mile End going about my business on a day, probably at the end of August, and I ran into Rob Green, who was the president of the CSU at the time, and he said, Zev, hey, I wanted to talk to you. We're having this conference and we need it catered. And I had a background in doing a lot of the food service around in the radical community, progressive community. QPERG would have their retreats every year and I would usually cater them. So I was known as a cook who did a lot of large-scale cooking around, and I thought, wow, that's an interesting gig. So I think I was contracted to do 300 meals times 3, so three meals a day times 300 servings for 3 or 4 days. And I thought, okay, that's great. So I put together a little team of people, and I inherited a team of people. The person who was going to do the food service for that event bailed out, but they had a group of people who were going to volunteer to do it. So I took them on. And over the course of those 3 or 4 days, we had a lot of fun. And a group of us that worked together just had a blast together. And we kind of left that catering event thinking, geez, how can we do this again? And part of our budget for that catering event, we bought some really big pots and pans, especially the big pots. We started to really dwell on those pots and thinking, how can we restructure our lives to do this every day? And concurrent to that, one of the fellows who worked with us there, Mike Barkey, he was really interested in the university infrastructure, and he liked to kind of root around the building and look and explore. And he came up here to the 7th floor and said, Sev, you gotta see this. There's like a football field of equipment up there. Like it's incredible how much food we could make if we had this equipment up there. And I came up here and thought, oh God, yeah, this is incredible. I mean, we could feed like half of Montreal from this kitchen up here. And that was in the back of our minds too, this idea of like shifting food production into the hands of the people, like using a space that's public. This is Concordia University. It's paid for by public money, and saying, how can we use public spaces for the public utility? And we felt really compelled by that idea. And at the same time, within the CSU, we had this radical climate of saying, no to corporate food, no to Sodexo. And people at that time were talking about Sodexo's involvement in the military-industrial complex. And people didn't like the monopoly that Sodexo had in the context of the university. So these things were all sort of coming together, and we started to really think, hey, this could be really, really, really neat to try to do this every day. So Mike and I, and we brought in a few other people. My cousin Janice Tiefenbach was involved. Another woman, Jan Rasso, was involved. These were art students. Laura Berzati, another art student, said, yeah, let's do this. And my cousin Janice was really instrumental in creating an artistic aesthetic around it. But we all were really committed to cooking and doing a lot of cooking. And Mike Barkey, at the time, lived at the Benedict Arnold House. And so he used to do food runs. So he was familiar with Premier Moison and the food banks and did pickups for them. And he thought, well, I could probably do pickups for our own food service. And he went around to some of the different churches and got donations and got some money that way. We got lots of dishes. And people were really excited because around here there's a lot of churches that aren't used, and they have this ethic of service, but there's no energy to do it. So we really tapped into this. People were so excited to give these young people the tools to make this happen. And there was money coming to us to buy our equipment, and there was all these plates and cutlery and stuff. And so we set up a kitchen at the Erskine and American Church across the street from the university, and they were so happy for us to take that over as our home. And we set all this stuff up, and then in December, we had this launch in the basement of Reggie's where we just had this huge potluck. And we wanted to bring the Frigo Vert on board too, and try to create this sort of resurgence in food politics and energy. The Frigo Vert at the time was run by a Dutch fellow named Ben, and he was a great manager of the Frigo Vert, but he wasn't connected to the university community, and it was sort of becoming something separate, and it wasn't doing well financially, didn't have a volume, and it wasn't growing, and it wasn't very popular. So we just wanted to try to bring these things together and bring people together collectively and eat meals together. So then in January, we started in earnest, and we had our kitchen at the Erskine American Church. We brought the food over every day, steaming hot pots across the street, across Sherbrooke, into the basement of Reggie's. There would be a huge lineup out the door when we would arrive with the food. And we felt like, yeah, this is really, really great. We felt we were bringing really great food to people. We were people eating together in this really tight, cramped corridors. It became a hotbed for being able to mobilize people and their political speeches every day. I think before I ever served a meal, every day that I served a meal, I would proselytize. I could say that word; it'd be good. But there'd be a lot of political talk, a lot of political organizing out of that space, and so that it was really, really beautiful. And part of our vision too wasn't just to be at the Erskine American Church, but was to try to bring together. We wanted to build a movement, and we tried to get the university involved in different ways, and we had a lot of success, and we spent a lot of energy navigating the university infrastructure to find the pockets of support and sympathy for us. So at certain points, I mean, we were out in the community as well, so we were going to all the fruiteries along St. Catherine to try to find their surplus food, to bring it into our kitchen. And at one point, we made enough contacts within distribution services that they were doing a truck run for us and showing up at the back door of the church and unloading for us the food. We made contacts. Jacques Saint-Amour was the guy who ran custodial services, and he said, "What do you need? You need cleaning supplies? Sure, come and get what you need." And so we were making these contacts. We were trying to build this sense of ownership over this project. We also, really important to the whole ethic of everything that we did was the history and background of Food Not Bombs. More than anything, that informed our work. I'd always volunteered with Food Not Bombs in various cities, Toronto, San Francisco, Victoria, wherever I had been previous in my life. And the lessons of Food Not Bombs are deeply ingrained in me and my ethic, but we wanted to recuperate. We wanted to serve this vegan food that was healthy and nutritious and fully accessible to everybody. And we wanted to build coalition and build a movement. So not only did we serve every day at Concordia, but every time there was a squat that opened up, we would be at the squat and we would serve. Every time there was a major demonstration, we wanted to be there to serve food, to strengthen our movements, to strengthen radical politics in the city, to strengthen the student movement and the student strikes. Anytime we felt like we needed a lot of people at an event, we would serve at that event and people would be there. So it was great for us to be able to mobilize and great for us to create a culture of sharing, of working together. And I think the biggest thing for me anyway and all of us was sitting back and thinking about what the possibilities are. Just saying, okay, there's this really embedded corporate culture within our university structure. All the liberal arts are being wiped out. All the natural sciences are being wiped out. There's such an emphasis on corporate research, funding within the university structure. But how can we take some of that space back? How can we go back in there and say, no. the buck stops here. We live in a neoliberal world. Paul Martin's our prime minister, but we're going to take back our university, and it's possible. And we saw it just not being our universities, but look at food service in hospitals, right? You have the most vulnerable people eating garbage provided by corporate service providers. So we saw this as being like, let's do it in one place first, and just do it so that we know that it can be done. We can take over a food service within a university. We can take over this massive investment that this public institution has put into this food service equipment, and bring it back to the people in the most simple, straightforward way, and provide them food. And it was cheap, and it was easy to do. You know, I mean, we put a lot of work into it, but you know, it worked. And the funding wasn't extensive of what we needed, and so I was really excited. We were really motivated by retaking this public space and saying, let's create different models for how our public institutions react and work with the constituencies that live with and are serviced by those institutions.